Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Moving SAP to AWS, Best Practices Learned from Customer Success Stories. I'm Kristen Tanner, Global Marketing Strategist for Protera Technologies, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. We really appreciate all of you taking your time out of your busy schedules to attend today's educational session. We hope to answer all of your technical questions for migrating SAP to AWS by sharing our customer success stories. We will be starting the webinar shortly, but first a few housekeeping notes. Only our presenters' phones are live. Your microphones have been muted by default. Our presenters will be answering questions at the conclusion of the webinar. If you have a question at that time, please type it into the Q&A function. If we don't get to your questions throughout the presentation, I or another member of the Protera team will be sure to follow up with you directly after. And lastly, this webinar will be recorded and a link will be made available to all attendees. Now I would like to introduce today's presenter, Patrick Osterhaus, Chief Technology Officer for Protera Technologies.
Thanks, Kristen. Thanks for that nice introduction. As Kristen mentioned, I'm Patrick Osterhaus, Chief Technology Officer for Protera. And today we'll be talking about these topics. We'll be doing an introduction of Protera and around the topic of moving SAP systems into the AWS cloud. And our focus is around the customer success stories. We'll get there, as I mentioned, through the introduction of Protera, and then we'll take a look at the drivers in our IT market and the forces that are driving companies to adopt cloud, specifically on AWS. And we'll look at the SAP solutions available today for AWS. We'll also take a look at how we can deploy SAP on AWS and some recommended reference architectures for that. And then we'll jump into the main point on this webinar, which is around the SAP customer success stories running SAP systems on the AWS cloud. And then lastly, we'll go through one of those success stories, a most recent success story, and an opportunity to follow in their footsteps with a free SAP HANA on AWS assessment. So a little bit about Protera, show how we got to where we're at today and why we're qualified here to speak to this content. We've been based in Chicago, Illinois for almost 20 years. We were formed in 1998, and we have a global reach. We have offices in the US. Our headquarters, as I mentioned, is in Chicago. We have offices in Latin America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. And we have employees outside even those regional offices scattered throughout many, many countries around the world in addition to those regional offices. So our platform, as we deliver our services, we call AppCare, that is provisioned and provided 24/7 follow-the-sun support. We'll talk a little more about those services in the AppCare platform here later in this presentation. Our mission at Protera is to deliver and focus upon the leading thinking and the leading way to provide state-of-the-art services around SAP on the cloud. And we've been focusing on this for many, many years, many decades now, to do the very best, providing the best innovations that are in the market and providing those to our SAP customers. And we'll get a good sampling of that with our customer success stories, which we'll show shortly. Part of our journey here is to make sure that we're staying in touch with our partners, especially around SAP's roadmap. And the way we do that is to make sure that we fall in line with their best practices and their recommendations on how we best run SAP and do migrations of SAP systems in the cloud. And so we stay lockstep with what SAP recommends with our certifications. And we've most recently, a month ago, just achieved a global certification, which requires 3 certifications over 3 months over 3 different continents. So we just recently received that. We'll get the icons updated on our website in these presentations shortly, but we certainly got that in our background with certifications that SAP goes back to 2008. Up to now, we have 5 certifications. As I mentioned, up till now it was national, based in the US, now it's global. So we have these 5 certifications which you can provide these services around the world in a global cert from SAP. Also want to mention that we have a tight integration with Amazon Web Services, and we take that partnership very seriously to stay on top of the latest technology and innovations that AWS keeps bringing to their cloud services. And we'll see that in the presentation here today, how we are providing those new innovations in the AWS cloud to our customers to reap the full benefit of cloud and to run their SAP systems most cost efficiently, yet provide the best performance and the most features. And I'll also mention our valued partnership with SUSE, and that is a tight coupling around the HANA space, especially providing advanced features like HA and DR for SAP HANA on AWS. So very, very nice features there, which we don't talk to a lot in this presentation. We're going to have breakout webinars just on those two topics. So we'll have future content coming in those areas and how our customers are capturing value from those services. So our two areas of our business we can focus upon is around the Protera AppCare, which you're seeing in the upper right. The AppCare platform is our application management and services platform. And through this, we provide a standardized global reach solution that provides our help desk, the monitoring, and all the advanced features around designing the solution in DR and HA and backups and making sure the monitoring is working sufficiently. And then also making sure the systems are operating in a secure and robust fashion, with making sure the patches are being done, as well as any intrusion detection and all the monitoring from any threats. So that Protera AppCare platform is a full solution, and how we provide those services is around the SAP certifications and how we enforce that. So that's a big area. We'll go into that in more detail in the next few slides. Then I'll also mention at the very end of the presentation around Protera FlexBridge, and this is our services around migrating SAP compute into the cloud. And we have separate webinars just on this topic. It's a vast and deep topic. We have a lot of success stories, which we'll show one here in this presentation. So our differentiators, the ITO cloud, the brokering of cloud services, and that certification from SAP focused upon the HANA and the newest innovations going into cloud. So breaking out our AppCare platform a little more, we can focus upon this middle piece, and that is how, or the what, I should say, of what our AppCare platform is. You can see the full stack, starting with the infrastructure and these cloud services that AWS provides, and moving up towards the administration of the compute and the storage and the best practice of how to build the SAP systems, as well as these, the care and feeding of the systems to make sure the administration is being done properly up to SAP and our operating systems partners and database partners, best practices, and making sure the support is done in a manner that they best recommend. And then also providing these advanced features around monitoring, prevention of problems occurring, making sure backups are obviously happening upon schedule, but also can we make them run and optimize even better? And we'll have some ideas that we'll share here later in this presentation around backup specifically. And then also around DR, and like I say, HA, these, how can we best capture these features in the AWS cloud and bring these SAP customers? So the service that SAP customers sign up for, it's a monthly subscription, and they get all this baked into the solution. Another key aspect to this Protera AppCare is that it's not just for the AWS systems. We can extend these standardized services and best practices that SAP recommends into the private data center. So any existing on-premise systems that the customer has, we'll extend the same approach and this platform that we've developed into the customer on-premise systems. So as we'll see a little bit later, we have some scenarios around hybrid approach. You'll see that we can provide the AppCare platform and its services even to on-premise. So merging the private data center on-premise systems with the SAP systems in the cloud in AWS, and integrating that where it's seamless to the end users, where they don't know where the systems are. They are getting the benefits of the Amazon Web Services for anything newly built, and still coupling that and connecting it to the existing systems that are on-premise. And the other key part here to consider on the AppCare platform is, although we're focused on the SAP stack, and you can see with the SAP systems up top, that includes Business Suite, and that includes the analytics, the BI systems. So any of the SAP versions SAP provides, we fully support that. And we go back, we have companies that even run the oldest versions of SAP back to even release 3, which we fully support and manage on behalf of those customers. But we also extend that to the latest technologies, including SAP HANA and S/4HANA. And again, you'll see that in the customer success stories, examples of both those. Within the AppCare platform, extending beyond SAP, we also have the Microsoft suite of tools, Office 365, SharePoint, and extending this with any third-party applications that SAP utilizes. So we'll provide that support in our best practices around design to make sure that solution is running the very best in the cloud. Wanted to give proper context of our experience, and over the last 18 years that Protera has been in business, a lot of the focus has been around implementations. Those first few years in the 90s, a lot of companies were doing SAP global rollouts over multiple years, and that's where we gained much experience around the design and sizing aspect. So making sure that SAP systems are sized properly, making sure that all the considerations are done day one to ensure that system's going to run properly for the many years later that's going to be operated. So we have a lot of experience with this, we could call the life cycle of the SAP system. This is around the deployment and the support and optimization parts, as well as migration. In the past, some migration meant moving from one data center to another many times. In the last decade, it was moving to a hosting model. And now most recently, it's now moving to a cloud model. And a lot of those same ideas and methods of how we move the compute is very similar. There's a lot of options how we do that. And we certainly have a lot of experience with doing varying types of upgrades and migrations, which you'll see shortly. Point is that we've done this for a long, long time, and we can provide good guidance around what the best practices and best options are for your use case. Back to this Protera AppCare idea and the platform. One big idea is that we want to innovate and provide any of these new technologies that are certified by SAP with the partners, and specifically AWS Cloud. What is provided in that cloud as a service and a nice feature, we quickly bring this into our AppCare platform and provide that to our customers. So for example's sake, and we can think of these 5 areas as highlights around what the cloud provides SAP specifically, and even non-SAP systems. The first 4 really provide the efficiencies and the cost reduction and complexity reduction. But I'll go through each one real briefly here. So the first one here on flexibility is the choice of apps and deployment options. So this means from the standpoint of AWS's marketplace, there's many images which are called AMIs, Amazon Machine Images, which provide that base starting place to install an SAP system. So you can go out there today and get a HANA image, and you can build a system within minutes that is pre-populated with a HANA system running on SUSE, which is the preferred OS for HANA. And you would have that as a starting place to quickly build the SAP environment. And with that, not only the image is provided, but you can even provide provision, I should say AWS provides very quick provisioning of the full environment. So this is a way you can provision the landscape, being a dev quality production, as well as provisioning the surrounding network, which is called a VPC. So all these rule sets and how you're going to create subnets and securing ports, this all can be automated and done to AWS's best practices. So we see that flexibility where the choices of how to build a system are already made to best practices, and quickly you can build from a choice of apps, those SAP systems in AWS Cloud. The scalability is a key part, and this provides some interesting options now not previously available in a non-cloud environment, where you can build a system to what you need for the next 6 months. And as you use HANA or the SAP system more, you can scale it as needed. So you can go to an on-demand model, run exactly the size system you need, and scale up or even down if it's a seasonal business as it's required. So it provides a lot of agility, which is the next point here, for rapid deployment and right-sizing that compute. So rapid deployment, can be around making system copies very, very quickly. We'll see some examples here shortly of how SAP customers are utilizing this key feature of AWS to do rapid deployments on test environments. So you can quickly copy the production system within minutes and have a way to do regression testing, or provide a way you can do upgrades and patch testing ahead of time, without affecting your productive landscape. And the last key point here is around the security, and this is built into the AWS Cloud, into all of our designs around SAP. We're always considering those best practices around security, which AWS has many, many certs on the physical level, as well as all built into the cloud itself, following the best practices within the industry. So very important we capture this not only in where the systems run and how they run, but in the design itself. So the best practices are built, they're pre-baked from day one, and all the applications take advantage of this AWS security foundation. So these 4 points, 1 through 4, drive this efficiency through all these best practices and running the systems at the right size and quickly being able to deploy them. We're reducing the cost of and getting a better RTO on our investments within SAP, and at the same time, we're reducing the complexity. So key metrics for any SAP customer for running their systems. So with that, I'll summarize and end our discussion on Protera AppCare. this is an important piece to provide us a good foundation for the next pieces coming up here in the presentation. So in summary, this is our managed infrastructure platform for the SAP systems, which can be extended to AWS and on-premise. So now we'll focus upon the current state of IT and look at some of these driving forces of why companies are adopting AWS and also these new technologies from SAP. We can see this time that we live in is of massive change. We have everyone having mobile devices and not only having access 24/7, but they want real-time access to the data. They want current updates. They want to be able to check the latest information on order status within their systems. And so it's driving the SAP systems also to become more real-time. They were integrated with R3 and the batch processing at night for MRP would run and it provided integrated source of data like never before. Yet Hasso and his team delivered this promise of real-time analytics where we could get data within seconds for looking at how the sales of a product did over the last day versus the last quarter. And so the HANA in-memory solution, which has been provided by SAP over the last few years, is answering these trends and the demands from the IT market and from the consumer market. So we look at these converging of many important trends in IT, the hyperconnectivity, which is the mobile, everyone has many devices, and even the device now as a user, where we see this in the IT of things, where the RFID and all these chips are collecting data and automatically send it to the system. So we have to be able to digest these massive amounts of information and be able to parse that and find the important information through all this. So HANA answers that question. The supercomputing, we see massive improvements in the chipsets and the capabilities, especially around memory access, which coupled with the in-memory computing is providing quantum leaps here in the performance capabilities. And then it seems like we can't go at least a week without a big threat happening, through either a company being exposed or it being accounts through our devices that are being accessed. So we always have to have a keen eye on security and staying ahead of where the market is. So obviously very important part to any SAP system that we architect in the cloud. So we are always going to be conscious of that going forward. And then we see these new technologies, many promising areas around the sensors and robotics, 3D printing, all these new technologies that are providing innovation from the smallest of companies and even individuals where they can provide a new solution and be able to do a proof of concept very quickly with all these new technologies, which brings us to the cloud computing. And this is the way that we can enable these improvements and possibilities. So these IT trends drive many IT executives and managers' roadmap. And we can see here in the bubbles here, all these considerations that are going to be looked at for the next few years of what's an SAP system, what's it going to look like in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. All these considerations, we're running on hardware on premise that is about to expire. It's past its end of life. So should we be looking at cloud and moving that compute into a model where it continually can be refreshed? Once you take the system down and bring it up, it can be running on new hardware. We also need to stay current with SAP's development and stay on top of the latest upgrades and all the business processes and improvements within the application. So we have to look at an upgrade. Yet we also, at the same time, have to cut costs, make sure that we're running our IT departments the most efficiently while keeping at our performance metrics and improving those over time and always capturing these new innovations. So all these questions are answered within moving to the latest SAP versions and to HANA, as well as adopting cloud and moving to AWS. And that's what the focus of this rest of these slides in this deck are going to talk to. So let's change topic here and let's look at now running SAP on AWS and what it requires from a functional standpoint. And then we'll also take a look at what runs today in some of these use cases. So foremost, if you're running SAP production systems, you will require Premier support. And the way that that's categorized is either business or enterprise support, and that's a paid service. And the reason for that is if SAP finds an error within the cloud, within the operating system or below, they're going to need to be able to engage AWS support to most accurately look at that problem. So that's a first requirement. And then these next three are varying degrees of requirements depending upon what SAP systems you're running. And the big qualification here is if you have SAP HANA or not. So if you have SAP HANA, it's going to require a little more monitoring. So this enables SAP to see into the SAP systems in the cloud, as well as requiring high capacity network connections. It's a little higher for HANA, as well as the storage requirements. If you're running in memory, you obviously have to have the approved compute, but also there's storage requirements to make sure that that is performing as required for HANA. So you can see this slide, it's a nice summary of all the platforms that are currently supported for AWS from SAP. And obviously, we got to stay lockstep with where SAP is going. So we have the S4HANA and we have BW4HANA. These totally new schema for the application provided by SAP for running in-memory computing. And then we also have the SAP Business Suite, which is wide encompassing. So this is the ERP system. This is CRM, SCM, and SRM. So all those are all considered under that bucket. Then we also have the Business Warehouse. That's BI and BW, which was the biggest adoption early on for HANA. And then we have SAP NetWeaver, which is the older generation of in all let's say add-on components. So GRC is part of that, the mobile, many areas within NetWeaver. So you can see the vast majority of all SAP solutions, new versions at least, are all supported within AWS. In the middle, you can see the database and mobile solutions. So what's currently supported. Obviously, HANA's there. And then we also see the OS and DB platforms. So many versions and types of databases and operating systems. The operating system, the key metric or thing to remember is x86 based. So no Unix versions of operating systems are supported. And most recently in the last few months, Oracle is supported. That is supported only on the Oracle Linux version. So you may require an OS change to get Oracle, if you have SAP running on Oracle, to run in a supported manner on AWS. But we're going to revisit this slide a little bit later. This is a nice slide that just breaks up the use cases and considerations. If you're looking to do AWS, you haven't moved any compute into AWS for your SAP system. These are good categories of where you could consider moving systems. And in our use cases that we'll go through, our success stories today, you're going to see examples of every one of these categories. So these are existing SAP systems on the left, and on the right, you see new SAP customers. So in new SAP customers, you have the green field. You can build a new, and again, for all of these, we have examples also. So excited to share the things that have already worked. But for a lot of ideas, pretty much bring any kind of compute SAP has, you can run in AWS in a certified manner. So we'll come back on this one, so I won't go into the details just yet. And as I mentioned before, this is an important point to think about. If you are running currently today Unix, you're going to have to do some kind of migration. So you can see here the categories where you see Unix on the right side. You're going to have to do some type of migration to move that data over to an operating system that's supported on AWS. And it's certainly something that we've done many a times. We can go through the details if you're in that environment and you have to go through that. We certainly can help in that solution. There's easier or many more choices if you're already on x86, which is the Windows systems or the Linux operating systems, and it provides some more choices on how you can do migration. So to talk about what's supported for SAP, we can see three categories. So if you are looking at HANA, you're going to want to focus upon that memory optimized. So that's on the right side. So you can see here, AWS has names for all the instances, and you can think of the instance being a VM or a physical server. And the key attributes of an instance is the CPU, and here it's denoted as virtual CPUs, and then the memory, and you have this sized in gigabytes. So you can see as we go up, obviously, they become more powerful. And you can see the SAPS rating, which is the value attributed to how many users and how complex of business process can you run that system. So you can see that go up as we move up the box. The top 5 under the memory optimized, those are all certified for SAP HANA. So that means if you run an SAP production system, it has to be one of those instances for SAP to provide support for that. Now you certainly could run HANA in a smaller instance, yet you can't do that for production. So you can see those for the R3 4X large, which is 122 gigabytes of memory. You could run that on AWS, but you just cannot run that for certified production. And then the non-HANA systems, we can go to the other side. And this is the general purpose and the compute optimize. And you can see again the sizes here. So you can bring the biggest of workloads, the non-HANA systems, into AWS today. You can run one instance. So this could be, if you have a very, very large system, you can run one instance at 256 gig of memory, and you could additional app servers onto that. So you can scale it out in that scenario for non-HANA systems. So we're talking some very, very large SAP systems that you can run today certified in AWS. And the other thing I really like to remember and think about with the AWS compute is that this is continually innovating. It was less than 2 years ago, there was only one available with R3 8X large for HANA. That's the 244 gig. And now within, well, let's say 18 months, now we have 4 new additional sizes available for HANA for certification. So it's a key attribute of the AWS cloud that it's continually innovating, continually bringing new compute and new options for the consumer, and reducing the price at the same time. So let's talk about the AWS architecture and some deployment models, things to think about if you haven't installed an SAP system there yet today. And while I do that, it's important to understand how customers are working with AWS, not only as a company, but to take the technology and innovations that's provided in the cloud, how best to work that within their IT department. And what we're seeing is there is certainly a model for companies that are very mature and have been running cloud for many years that they choose to bring this into their own. So they'll actually have their own SAP managed services running for AWS on their own team. So you can see they have the SAP customer, they'll fully manage the SAP aspect, and then they'll have AWS for the infrastructure. And certainly we see a few customers doing that. Our recommendation is to partner with an expert that's certified in the cloud that understands how best to model and design the solution from day one and can provide advice and take care of all the innovations and continually innovate the solution over time. So our services fall in this right side where we provide the AWS managed services as well as taking care of the SAP hosting side. So you'll see all the examples we have in our case studies fall into this right side bucket. So when we think of bringing a new SAP system into AWS, we want to talk about some of the basic considerations here, and then we're going to move into the more complicated scenarios, and then we'll get into the case studies. So the basic one to think of is separating the compute. So that's the orange squares there. And again, we mentioned that is the RAM and CPU. So it's the size of your SAP system, and that's where the database is installed and users log into it. And then the EBS, that's Elastic Block Storage. That's the actual place where all the data is stored. So that you can think of that as the file system or a drive on a physical server. That's the red rectangles below. Now, what is a key attribute to the AWS cloud is they provide a service called S3. And S3 provides the capability to go to a lower tier of storage and copy those EBS volumes really quickly. So it's a really nice way that you can provide advanced features around backups to quickly back up your systems and reduce the time to restore them, more importantly. So it's a really nice feature built into the cloud that we provision, take advantage of, and put our best practices and SAP's best practices on backups to best provision them here for your solution. And the other key part here with this standard architecture is the design around the network. So we see here this outside ring. You can see that there's the black ring is referring to the VPC. And with this VPC, it provides a lot of protection within securing the network so we can restrict access to very specific users and computers and also the applications that can be accessed. And you can see in this example, there's to the customer on-premise environment, we have two options with network. We have the VPN, which is a site-to-site, which is a very low-cost option, very effective, and it's for most of our use cases, actually, it's sufficient. You know, some other customers provide or prefer a subservice that provides a dedicated SLA and can subscribe to higher bandwidth if they have those requirements, and that is through the direct connect. So you could connect a current corporate MPLS through this manner and extend your current data centers with the compute in AWS, so it's all seamless and you have the performance of this MPLS high-speed network for all your compute, either on the cloud or on-premise. So the basic model is here. Extending that much further, and this is a little busy, is around the business continuity idea. So we have HA and DR represented in this slide. So you can see here the regions of US East is the orange rectangle outside. That's representing the Virginia area. So we have the production landscape as well as the sandbox dev quality components of that all running within that region. Now the key part to this is seeing with the base installation and features of AWS Cloud, we can enable some very complicated features for free of cost. And one of those features is around the CloudWatch EC2 auto recovery. What this feature provides is the ability to do hardware HA. So if the hardware would fail for some reason, the AWS Cloud would automatically restart it. And that's a free of charge that can be built into every solution. So that's something we recommend and build into every environment that has a production system on it. The other idea that's shown in the slide is around putting another region, which is US West, which is located in Oregon, which will have the DR system. And again, that also has built-in HA into that site. So we can ensure to many nines, to 99.99959s, that we are guaranteeing the availability of those systems out for the production environment as well as DR, and having that always replicated at any time. And we have webinars just on DR. We can go into a lot of features there. It's many features which are captured by customers. In some of our customer use cases, we're going to see that. So I'll save some of those details till then. So getting into the success stories, one key part is how do you get to putting AWS in the cloud? And again, this is not the topic of today's webinar, but it's important to provide context of how some of these customers got to where they are and the decisions they made along that journey. So if we look at the top side, if you're starting in the left and you're looking at how to go to cloud and putting SAP in the cloud, or you may even be looking at doing SAP HANA in the cloud, you're going to be looking at two big choices. And that two big choices are, you're going to do a new deployment. So you're going to install a new, and you might do some data loads and load that system up for that fresh install. Or you're going to take that existing system and you're going to migrate it. So that's the bottom leg. And within that leg, there's some key decisions we made. Either you're going to copy everything, make no changes, or you use this as an opportunity to transform your business and go to all the newest versions of SAP and go to cloud at one time. We have customer case studies, which I'll show in a few minutes, which goes through every single one of these options. So we'll talk through those. And with that, this is a good introduction to the Protera FlexBridge service. And at the end, I'll do a real brief recap of it. This is the service that's used for any of the migrations you're going to see here in the next few slides. In nutshell, high level, these are the services that provide the movement of on-premise, or it could be in another cloud, and moving this into AWS. These are the services that we provided to do this. So again, I wanted to bring this slide up. We talked about this briefly already. We have all these use cases talked to in the next upcoming 6 or 7 or 8 slides. So we have this all-in prod quality dev migration, and we have scenarios which is going to be a customer that moves all their compute, including non-SAP and SAP in the scenario. We also have the hybrid architecture, which you're going to see an example which works extremely well today. So not only is this first a proof of concept idea where you do dev and you have that learning with prod, we actually have it where we have production in the cloud with production on-premise working. That's the scenario we'll talk about here. And then we also have many, many companies running DR in AWS, which we're going to see here momentarily. And the last thing is migrations. So let's get into it. So GulfMark is an existing SAP customer. They're running many, many applications from SAP. And this is also non-SAP environments. So they have many of their servers, they have predominantly Windows servers that they moved over to AWS. So they did a full landscape production migration with minimal outages to their end users. So they went from multiple data centers all to one region within AWS. And most recently, they've extended the capabilities of having the resiliency of their business by extending DR for those SAP production systems. So that's most recently been built out in the last few months. So this migration took just a couple months, and there was a minimal outage for impact to the end users on that. And they're running, as I mentioned, SAP ERP, process integration, GRC for compliance, and lastly, solution manager, as well as many non-SAP systems. Another example of SAP migrations, this one is to HANA on AWS running on SUSE, is Pacific Drilling. And this one just went live actually just a few weeks ago. This migration was 4 to 6 weeks in length. I think it was 6 weeks from inception to moving production over and doing all the test runs. So very quick migration, and again, minimal outage to end users. They're running SAP Business Suite predominantly and on HANA. So they just moved to HANA on cloud and capturing the business value there. Improved run times for their jobs, as well as the new analytics, which they're enjoying. For our candy company, so they have had SAP for many years, ERP Business Suite, running it on-premise, and they wanted to enable business objects with HANA. And they came to us, and they wanted to see the best way to deploy that solution. Our recommendation was to put that in a hybrid architecture and actually put that into AWS. So they have on-premise ERP connected to business objects on HANA in AWS in a hybrid model. So that connection, their on-premise systems are located in Chicago, and their AWS systems are located in Virginia. And they do nightly data loads, and their analytics within BobJ works as if it was on-premise. This implementation was just a few months in length, and our functional partner, Dickinson Associates, did the implementation of the business re-engineering and the training of that environment. And there's actually a use case on the AWS website around SAP specifically for Ferrara. Another great value, and this is a great place to start with putting SAP systems into AWS, is around the proof of concept and demo systems. Tableau software uses this for their demo systems for putting their BI tool sets, which is a mobile app that can run and pull data into SAP systems. They have all those demo systems for SAP running in the AWS cloud. So quickly they can provision them, scale up, make copies, do whatever is needed for their demo systems in a quick manner. Then we have one of the earliest SAP systems that went live on AWS, which is Merrifield. And the really interesting nature of their business is seasonal, where they'll have the vast majority, 40% of their business will be done in 2 months. So there's no need to have those SAP systems run at full capacity for the next 10 months. So we'll actually, for those 2 months, scale up as needed, add additional compute to the SAP system, only for those months where it's needed. So we can right size the system size and reduce the cost for the customer for those times it's not needed. And again, this is another case study. SAP and AWS posted a video on this on YouTube, which describes the merits of running this elastic model for their business system. S/4HANA, this is for ArcLight Cinemas on the West Coast. And their deployment was in 16 weeks. So this was new, greenfield, putting SAP S/4HANA, new schema, new system, into the AWS cloud and providing that value within 4 months. This was done with our functional partner, Savanas. We're running on Windows SQL on AWS. So this is a new implementation on AWS. And this brings us into one of our largest case studies and use cases, I should say, is around disaster recovery. And this is where we started with putting SAP customers into AWS Cloud. And this is a nice mix here of sampling of the demographic of companies that are using DR. Harvey has a very large DB2. It's an ERP system, and their DR is all replicated within AWS. And one of the nice features for all of these customers that they're taking advantage of is this DR system is always protected, so it's always replicated. And to create a copy of DR, we quiesce the synchronization for a few minutes, and then we can spin up a copy within minutes of that environment. So this copy can be used for DR testing, as well as a copy of production. So you could use this for patching your environments, for doing end user training, or doing any kind of regression testing for any new development. This environment can be spun up in minutes, and it could even replace the quality system if you want to get rid of an on-premise system or repurpose that hardware for something else. This is a very nice side feature of putting disaster recovery in the cloud, because we take advantage of those features of the cloud, of the elasticity, and be able to provision systems so quickly. This case is a really nice example of taking an older version of SAP in database and making it fully synchronized into the cloud with all the cloud features. That was actually one of our very first DR systems that we built in the cloud, and there's a case study on that one also. And Midwest Tape is a very nice example. It replicates a very large ERP system, which that system's also integrated into a custom-built application that Midwest Tape has built on AWS. So they synchronize not only their hosted ERP system to DR, yet they integrate that same ERP system to this on-demand media streaming service that they've built within AWS. So very sophisticated cloud customer, and they found the best uses of the cloud and applied it with our design and in provisioning to use this for their DR. And they actively test this many times a year to make sure their DR system and their process and their business continuity processes are all current and as good as they should be. And then the last use case scenario here is our most recent one, and this is around combining the SAP upgrade and taking advantage of all these ideas, these trends in the market, and these things that we're seeing as important to be able to embrace and use the answers that SAP provides with in-memory computing with HANA and the cloud features of AWS to transform your business. Fitch Ratings is doing exactly that by doing the SAP upgrade, the HANA migration, and AWS migration all at the same time. They have ERP, Business Objects, and Solution Manager running on-premise today. We've done the proof of concept, and we're starting to do the dev systems now of moving all their SAP systems, dev, quality, and production for all these landscapes, running on SUSE, on HANA, on the AWS platform. And this brings in, again, this solution of the Protera FlexBridge and the capabilities around it. So I'll finish here, and I'll talk about an opportunity to get a free assessment and talking about FlexBridge. The key part of FlexBridge is we can transform the business with all these big changes with the OSDB migration, the move to HANA, the SAP upgrade, Unicode conversion, and move to cloud all in one step. When we say step, this means only one downtime for the users and one testing cycle for the business. So we see this as a very key transformative idea of how we can move to cloud to SAP HANA. And we do this through the tool of the software, our best practices, and our services. So we combine that as an end-to-end solution. And the way we start this is with a free assessment. It's very simple and very quick to do. You register for the assessment, we provide you an ABAP program, and you send us the feedback, and we'll provide you a report. So it's a very quick way to get a lot of information of how to migrate to AWS and enable HANA for your business. And this is a high-level summary of what the report's going to have in it. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. Please get in the free assessment. And if those links are on our website also, so feel free to reach out through our website, and we'll get you connected and get that assessment running for you. All right, so we're getting close on time, so we have a few questions coming on the Q&A, so we can answer those here first. Feel free to If you haven't done so already, submit it through the Q&A. We have 3 that have already popped in, and we'll start with those. So the question is, the largest, they saw the slide on the size, the 2 terabytes being the max. What is the maximum for non-HANA? It's a good question. So if you're not going to move to HANA right away, what we recommend is you build the central instance that can scale. The central instance is the database as well as the central processing of the SAP system. And that can right now go to 256 gig, which is a very, very large system. If it has to go larger than that, then we can add additional app servers. So logically, I can't think of a limit. We haven't seen one of putting a very, very large system non-HANA into AWS that we couldn't fit. So feel free to, if you have specific sizes, happy to see it. There's a lot of recommendations too. Even before you just move your system over, you're not going to migrate to HANA. There's a lot of remediations that can be done with the migration, and we're happy to go through all those just to make sure that you're getting the best value of the sizing of that system. Or there's some very fast activities that can be done at low cost to make sure you're optimizing that environment while you're doing the migration, or the move, I should say. So the next question is, if you're not doing an upgrade in the move to HANA, how does the migration differ? So there were some examples we showed here, which we would consider these an as-is migration. And those are much simpler. If the customer does not want to change the upgrade of the SAP version or move to a new operating system, as long as it's supported by AWS, there's a lot of very quick ways we can do that without even any downtime to the users. So it depends on where you want to go. We highly recommend with the solution with FlexBridge that it provides the opportunity to move to cloud, to HANA, and the latest version of SAP. Yet if the customer doesn't want HANA today and it's in the roadmap for later, you can still capture the value going to cloud now. And there's certainly ways we can capture doing that through a migration and making sure we have little to no downtime affecting the end users. And then lastly, this is a question on what is the largest migration we've done to AWS for FlexBridge. And right now, our largest one that we've done in testing so far is 6 terabytes. So that one, we can get down to doing that all in a weekend for a downtime. And that includes the end user training and testing and validation. So the largest systems can move over, especially to HANA. The nice thing about HANA is it compresses the data very nicely. We're seeing a system roughly a third, let's say 30 to 40% of the size that's non-HANA, that will translate to that size in HANA. So there's quite a bit of a savings in how the data is stored. So those are the questions that came through so far. Feel free to hit the Q&A. I don't see any more, so that might be our wrap up.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick. That was a fantastic webinar.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there's no other questions that come in, have a great day, everyone, and we will be in touch shortly. Thank you.